couple of weeks ago, I learned that my graduate school alma mater, University of Michigan, had folded to the directive from the Trump administration that is illegal and unconstitutional, that all higher educational institutions scrub diversity, equity, and inclusion from their curriculum, their websites, from everything in order to continue to receive federal funding. And when I shared this and shared how upset I was by it, several people responded, but what are they supposed to do? They were going to lose their funding. This brings me to lesson 1 of Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. Lesson number 1 is do not obey in advance. What he says is, most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. So we begin with institutions showing power what it can do. Thankfully, Harvard University stood up to them, and MIT followed suit. Now, of course, Harvard's response has been met with now the White House claiming that the letter to Harvard University was fake or incorrect, and they should have somehow known this. Don't even get me started on this. But Harvard was the first institution to say, no. And then K-12 institutions, there have been some states, thankfully mine, Colorado is one of them, where we are saying, no, we are not going to scrub DEI from curriculum in order to make our current president and administration happy. We're going to continue to abide by the Constitution and by the rule of law. Snyder goes on to say, anticipatory obedience is a political tragedy. He shares that in early 1938, Adolf Hitler, by then securely in power in Germany, was threatening to annex neighboring Austria. After the Austrian chancellor conceded, mind you, he conceded because of a threat. It was the Austrians' anticipatory obedience that decided the fate of Austrian Jews. Local Austrian Nazis captured Jews and forced them to scrub the streets and to remove symbols of independent Austria. Crucially, people who were not Nazis looked on with interest and amusement. Nazis who had kept lists of Jewish property stole what they could. Crucially, others who were not Nazis joined in the threat. As the political theorist Hannah Arendt remembered, when German troops invaded the country and Gentile neighbors started riots at Jewish homes, Austrian Jews began to commit suicide. The anticipatory obedience of Austrians in March 1938 taught the high Nazi leadership what was possible. At the very beginning, anticipatory obedience means adapting instinctively without reflecting to a new situation. So, institutions that have been threatened with funding loss by the current administration adapted instinctively without reflecting to what their obedience would insinuate. People are remarkably receptive to new rules in a new setting. They are surprisingly willing to harm and kill others in the service of some new purpose if they are so instructed by a new authority. This is where we're at. We cannot obey in advance. In fact, I think one of the most beautiful representations of not obeying in advance has happened in the last 24 hours when a man who lived in a neighborhood in Tennessee had ICE arrive at his house with the intention of questioning his ability to be in the country. And for however he was able to get out there, he and his children ended up in his minivan. I've only seen a couple of reports, so I don't know exactly how he knew ICE was coming and how he got into his minivan. But the point is, by the time ICE arrived, his minivan was surrounded by a human chain of his white neighbors holding hands, refusing to allow ICE to access the minivan. That is what we need to be doing. Obeying in advance would be staying in our houses, peeking through the blinds, and not living our privilege in honor of people who are less privileged, but just looking on with interest and possibly amusement, like the Austrian citizens who were not Nazis but were complicit in that power being able to take hold. Do not obey in advance.